All right. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am with Lesley King, and we are going to talk about some exciting topics today. But before we get started, just a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Mindy Burke. I am a career and life coach, and I help information technology professionals to create more time and space for the things that matter most. I consider myself to be a life revitalization expert. And all that means is most of my clients come to me because in the beginning of life, we are told by society and culture that you need to do certain things in order to create success and happiness. And my clients have gone through and done all of those things, checked all of the boxes, get to the end of that and go, I did everything I was supposed to do. Why am I not happy? Why do I not feel successful? And so that's what I do. And I want to dive in, though, to what Lesley does today, because I firmly believe we have a little bit in common with what we do. We're both career coaches to some degree, whether we work with the same people or not. We'll find out today. I met Lesley through a current mastermind group, coaching group that we are both a part of, and we have been peer coaching each other, and I really resonate with Lesley. I love how, for me, she has told me, some of the things that I need to hear, which is absolutely perfect for me because that's what I needed. So, Lesley, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I love to come and talk more about coaching because I love it. My name is Lesley King, and I'm an empowerment coach, and I work mainly with people that are ready to change and do something new, but they don't necessarily know exactly what that is.
Okay. And how did you come to coaching? Like, what led you in this direction? What's your background?
Well, my background, I have had a very interesting background. I worked in film production for years, and when I went to college and decided what I wanted to do, I was like, oh, film production sounds like fun. So I just sort of started on that path, and I had a successful career in film production. I started in commercials freelancing, and then I went to movies and TV shows and even moved to Los Angeles. And it was when I got to Los Angeles that I realized that the lifestyle wasn't really what I wanted for the rest of my life. And so I started to change things and started on my journey to figure out my next thing. So, and in that time, I just wanted to have a life that I could have more control over and that really aligned with who I am. And so between film production and today, I have managed a bed and breakfast. I opened a catering business. I opened a coffee shop. I tried nonprofit fundraising. And then I even got back into film production. And then I said after that, I was like, all right, it is time. I'm going to figure this out. And that is what I do with my coaching, is I help people figure that next thing out. The thing that was keeping me from making a change was the thought, I don't know what's next. And that just held me in confusion for many years.
Okay. So then did you hire a life coach, or what was it that brought you to life coaching? Like, how did you make that transition yourself?
I started to go, okay, I'm ready for something new. And somebody said, talk to this life coach. I was like, great. So we started talking, and she's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, how about this, 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 and this? And so I started looking into those things, and we didn't really connect as well as I didn't have any idea how to work with a life coach. And it just was almost too overwhelming for me at that point. Cause she's like, well, when are you going to call yourself this? And it wasn't coaching. It was in the art field. I was going to be like an art rep or an art consultant, and I was researching it. And like the next week, she's like, so when are you going to get your cards and do this? And I'm like, holy shit, that's way too fast. So it gave me an idea of what coaching was, and it gave me more ideas to look into other things. And that's when I realized, when I looked at all of the things of who I am and what I like to do, how I live my life, how I want to live my life, I came up with coaching, because that is, I went back to my personality, which I do with my clients too, is looking at who my personality is and what I like to do. And I'm a helper. I like to help people figure things out. Whenever I'm in a room and I'm talking to people, I even found at the end of film production, I would do this. I'd meet these production assistants, it's a very entry-level position on set. And I'd say, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And we would start talking about it. So I have always been that type of person. And it's fun to do it as my profession and do it for myself.
Very cool. I love that. So, what would you consider to be one of the most important things when you're considering, okay, what's next?
I think the most important thing is to realize that you do have everything within you, and that you can figure it out if you look at what you've done and how you want to live. It's really important to look at how you want to live. Because a lot of people don't think about that. They want to live in the mountains, but then they're in a city doing something because that's the job that they have. So there are ways to make your job and your life align.
Interesting. And have you ever had a client when you, or even someone you're talking to, maybe a colleague or someone who's considering hiring you, who you ask them what do they want, and they're like, I don't know. How do you handle that as a coach?
Well, that's where we start. And that's why they're coming to me most of the time, is because they don't know. And so I start to ask them questions. I give them exercises that will lead them down the road to figuring these things out. So the questions are hard. Some of them are hard. You're like, what? But if you think about them and it's like, just take your time, let's work through these things. And then I figure out where they are and what they want. Sometimes it's really fast and they go, yeah, I want to do this. I'm like, well, that's great. What does that look like? So let's start researching that. And then sometimes they just can't seem to figure it out. They can't get past the fact that they are not happy in their job. They're like, wait, I'm just unhappy. It's like, all right, well, let's work on that for a little bit and let's keep moving you forward. So I really believe it's all just about taking those steps and starting and committing to the process. That is the most important thing.
Okay. So when you're looking for a client, what is it? What kind of person are you looking for? What kind of, is there a specific, other than, obviously you had said career coach, what's next? Someone who's in confusion. Is there anything additional that you look for?
Well, one of the reasons when I first started coaching, I had been through a divorce and I was like the poster child of a divorce. I came out of it. I mean, I was way low. Had no money. I had lots of debt. I was just devastated. And I thought, well, and all my friends afterwards called me and said, how can I get through my divorce? So I helped all of these people through their divorces. And so when I first started coaching, I thought, well, maybe I'll just be a divorce coach. But it wasn't really about divorce that I was interested in. It was more about reinvention. And what happens when you get a divorce is that you have all of these goals together as a unit with your partner. And all of a sudden, those goals are gone. You have to either come up with new goals and a new way of life. My parents got divorced when I was in high school, and till my dad died 4 years ago, it was still in his life. And it's like, you gotta be kidding me. I do not want to be in that place. And I don't want anyone to be in that place, because it's never one person's fault. It's both of your faults. You need to take responsibility for the life you have. And that's what really made me decide, okay, I can sit here in confusion and say, I don't know what's next. Or I can say, I don't know what's next, but I'm going to figure it out, because this is the life I want. And I am the only one that can make that change. I am the only one that can change my life. And that is the most important part.
Okay. It sounds like, to me, if I can just reflect, that it sounds like the people that you work with and that you like to work with are those who are ready and willing to say, you know what, I'm willing to take responsibility for this part of my life, and I am ready and willing to do something about it.
Right.
Is there anything else that feels important to you, or from the aspect of your clients, that, you know what, this is what determines that I'm ready to do this work?
I think you're ready to do it when you're ready to do it, when you're just finished and you don't want to do what you're doing anymore. And, it's not a process that's overnight, and there's no magic pill. It's a process that takes some energy and some work. So that is the important thing to remember, that you have to do the work, that you have to, and you have a guide along the way. I love having somebody to talk to. I love bouncing ideas off of people. I love having that brainstorming thing. And that's exactly what I did when I worked in film production. I worked right next to the directors, and I was always that other eye, other ear, other perspective on things. Like, I was a script supervisor. And so there were times that, people were coming into a scene, and it's like, well, do you want them to carry their purse? Would they have taken their jacket off? All of those things are things that you look at. And so to have somebody that's like paying attention to those other things in your life and helping guide you through those questions is what I've always done. So therefore, coaching is just a natural transition for me. I like asking questions. I always have a million questions.
And that's a good thing. I mean, one of my favorite things is curiosity, deep curiosity, not just like, what's the weather like today, but why is the weather like that? Why is the sky blue? The deeper, that's a crazy analogy, but you know what I mean? Like the
That's
deeper
totally who
question.
I am. I'm a
Yeah.
curious person. I'm this person that's like, oh, I wonder how that works, so how
Interesting.
nice.
What do you attribute that to? Why do you believe you're so curious?
I just have always been that way. I mean, even my parents, when I was a kid, they gave me the book of why. I'm like, why is that? Why is that? And they gave me a book of why, so I would want to look there first before I could ask a question. Whatever. You should encourage that.
I envision little Lesley going to mom and going, why? Why? The little toddlers do. And mom just
How
going,
does
just
that
read the
work?
book.
Why does that work? What's going on with that? I was old enough to read.
Yeah.
So
Just read the book, Lesley. Don't
I
ask
know.
me why anymore.
Read the book.
That's so great. Okay. Is there any point of the process or where you help your clients to start developing that curiosity for themselves? And how do you do that?
Well, it's all with the questions
Okay.
and the look at their past, their accomplishments, their skills, what they like and dislike, so I make them look at those things. I hold a gun to their head. No, it's more like I give them the opportunity to look at things differently. And that's what I think a coach does. It gives you a different perspective on your life, on what you're saying and what you're thinking. And there are times you just can't get that perspective any other way.
Mm-hmm.
You can't come up with it in your head. You're like, why can't I figure this out? And it doesn't necessarily work that way all the time. So I've always consulted friends. I'm like, okay, I have this crazy thought. What do you think about this? And they're always, I'm always bouncing those kind of things off of people. It's like, is that crazy? Or, whatever. Most of the time you're like, yeah, that's not crazy. That's how I feel too. Or yes, that's crazy. Maybe you should look at it this way. And so just a different perspective really helps people.
Interesting. Okay. And my brain is going back to the session. We just left the mastermind session that we are both a part of. So just to let everyone on the audience know that. So that takes me back to the conversation we just left. Whereas, looking outside of ourselves versus looking internal. And how do you know when to agree with or go with what someone else says versus, no, this just really feels right for me versus, because I think, and this is just my perspective, Lesley, is that a lot of times we get caught up in trying to do what everybody else thinks is good for us. Whereas really, it's really something that comes from within us. So how do you help your clients make that distinction?
Well, it's all looking within themselves.
Okay.
It's not anything about what anyone else has said. I mean, there are times I have people look at what other people say their confidence is low or they're feeling bad about themselves or they think that they're not a good person. Then I say, okay, for the next week, listen, take in compliments, and so I make people do those kind of things because I think that's a really important step because I had to do it, all these things I've had to do. And that's how coaching is. But yeah, it's all about looking within yourself. No one's going to be able to tell you what you should be doing. Because when I'd ask people what I should be doing, there was one woman said, you should be a teacher. I'm like, why do you think I should be a teacher? She randomly just said that to me years ago. I'm like, why should I be a teacher? He goes, well, you totally command a room and you totally can command those dogs and make them do what they want. Because when I came in, the dogs were jumping everywhere. I'm like, no, go sit down. And they did. She's like, you'd be perfect with kids. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think that's the reason that I would be perfect with kids.
Yes, ma'am.
Do what I say, like I was biking the other day and a dog was chasing after me and I'm like, go home. And he did. I was like, oh, thank God he didn't bite me.
That's it. So, oh my gosh. So I want to know, how do you think you've built that presence? Because there's a lot of people, so career coaching, right? And empowerment coaching, there's a lot of people who want to be able to stand up and present in a meeting, or there's a lot of people who want to be able to, be a public speaker or present an idea to a group of investors or whatever it is. What do you think it is about you that has allowed you to have such a presence in a room?
Well, because I've practiced and I've done it. I mean, there were definitely times years ago I would go to a networking event, and that was when I was managing the bed and breakfast, that I'm like, I know no one in this room. This feels really weird. and I wasn't good at networking. And then I learned that I needed to be, that's the only way to do it. And when I'm promoting somebody else's stuff, it's so much easier. So now it's easier for me to promote those things for myself because I've done it enough times. Do I get nervous in front of a crowd? Oh, absolutely. I did a Toastmasters speech and I had practiced it. It was wonderful. And then the minute I started doing it in front of them, I was like, why do I have nerves? This is really weird. I just did this speech. This shouldn't be a problem. So, it doesn't mean that I don't get nervous, but I just keep going. I just keep working through it.
So if you had one piece of advice other than, just practice over and over, is there any piece of advice that you would give to someone who wants to be able to have a good, a big presence in a room?
I think that the trick is to connect with one person to start with.
Okay.
And then you connect with that person, you see them consistently, you connect with a couple people, you can see them consistently, and then all of a sudden it all comes together. Then you can go to the networking events and you're going to know people. And it's just so much nicer when you do, and most of those people want to connect too. They're there to connect. So that is why it's very easy if you look at it that way, that everybody's just wants to connect and meet people. So it's good.
Yeah. I love that idea. And even if you don't know anyone in the room, before, like if you have time beforehand, you walk into the room and you introduce yourself to just one person and have a 5-minute conversation with them before you get up on stage. You have that connection already with someone.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that piece of advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good. I'm glad it helped.
Yeah. So what else? What else would you like to share about what you do, who you connect with, how you help people? Is there anything else that you feel like you'd like to share?
Well, I didn't just work for other people in my career. If you notice, I said I managed a bed and breakfast. I started a catering business. I started a coffee shop. So I have done a lot of things in business as a small business owner and as a employee. I freelanced in film production, and that's not like I'm just going to go ahead and get a job and always have a job coming. There's a skill to it. You have to call people on a regular basis. You have to keep your connections going. So all of those things are skills that I can help you with or help clients with because I've done these things. I know what it takes to make those kind of things happen. So that's a skill I have. So a lot of my, I encourage people to design their next career because that's what it's about. Design the career to work with your life. And if you're doing that, I have one of my clients that's starting a microgreens growing business. And it's so exciting to watch her do these things and to watch her lessons and to watch her whole progress getting there. And so it's very exciting. And I'm also really good with that because I've done businesses before. So I know about different organizations you can tap into. I know about different groups to look at. I know about just a lot of different things being a curious person. I'm always like, oh, how does that work? And I live in a small town. So living in a small town gives me a different perspective on things than living in a city. So, and I've lived in cities before too. So I know sort of the way around a bunch of different areas and spaces. And I can see how to do those things. So I come with a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. As you're talking, what's coming up for me is what about those people who, I really do not like what I'm doing right now as a career, as a job, nothing. And I really love to do XYZ, whatever it is. I love to grow plants. I love to go ice skating, whatever it is, but there's no money in that. Like I couldn't support my lifestyle on that. How do you address that with a client?
Well, I think that we have to remember that I think there's money in anything that we put our mind and energy to. And then we have to realize, for me, I think it's really important to think out what is important to you. Yes, we need money to live, but how much money do we really need? We can make up a number and think we need that. But I remember when I was going through my divorce and I had no money, tons of debt. I was painting people's houses because I was transitioning back into film production and I just didn't have my clientele all signed up or ready. But I was transitioning back, and so I was still making contacts with them, but I was painting people's houses, and I would go and I'd do 2 days of painting at their houses, have like a $300 or something check, and I would run to the bank, put the money in and pay the bill. So I have been at that bottom level, and I know that life was great then too. I still had great friends. I still had, wonderful place to live. I still had the things in my life that I like to do. I'm still who I am, even if I don't have money. And I'm not saying that we don't need money, but really, how much do you need? What do you want? How are you going to get it? You can design it whatever way you want to do it. You can make it happen. And I really believe that. I think that it's really important to love what you do or really like what you do. And if you don't, who cares about the money? How are you feeling inside? How do you feel in your community? How are your relationships with other people? Those are the things I think that are the important things in life.
Oh, that is so good. So transitioning from what is it that I want, basically, what is it that I need right now in this moment to pay my bills? And how can I do that from a place of loving what I'm doing? And interesting, do you have any client stories, or maybe it's a story of your own life where, and you just said you were in that moment, how did it, going from something that you didn't appreciate or your client didn't appreciate to that, okay, I'm taking care of my needs, but I'm doing something I love, like taking that, I think some people would call that a step back financially, but stepping into something that you absolutely feel passionately about, how does that shift the rest of their experience of life?
Well, I think that that's the important thing to look at. It's like, how is that shifting the importance of your life? And I think it's really important to live. I just saw Harold and Maude last night, one of my favorite movies ever. It's done in 71 by Hal Ashby, and I love the music, Cat Stevens. And what I took from that movie last night, every time I watch it, I take something else, is that life is a bunch of experiences. And if you don't experience life, you're missing out. And it's not about the money you have. You can't take that with you. It's not about, the stuff you have. You can't take that with you. She gets this beautiful little thing from him. It's like a coin or something that he gives her. And she's like, oh, this is so beautiful. She takes it in, and then they're sitting right by the river, and she throws it into the river. And he's like, oh, she's like, I will always know where it is. Thank you so much for that wonderful gift. And it's like, she had the experience. She has the memory. She has the experience. Never will go away. So I think that's the important thing in life, is to have experiences.
Very cool. Okay. I'm going to ask again, is because we've talked a little bit since I asked this the last time. Is there anything else you want to share?
Trying to think of what else I can share. Just that it's such a fun process to finding your next thing. It's so much fun when you look at it that way. You can just design the coolest thing in your life.
Yeah,
And
it's all,
I did that when I was getting into coaching. One of the things that I did at the beginning is write my life vision for 5 years. And friends of mine, when their kids were in college, ended up house sitting around the world. And I was like, I want to do that. So I put that in my life vision, and what my business would look like and what my life would look like in 5 years. And I was just working on it. I hadn't really decided, okay, I'm ready to quit. So within 3 months of just putting that vision together, I was house sitting around the world. I was starting to house sit. And it was an amazing experience. And it opened myself to so many new ideas. And after that house sit, I realized, oh, I don't need to keep working and doing this part-time. I can make this work doing this full-time, even though it's going to take a while until it really takes off. I will live frugally and I will make it work, because this is what I want to do. This is the kind of life I want to live. And who knows, with COVID, that's a perfect example of who knows when we're going to die tomorrow. We could die tomorrow. And how do you want to live your life today? And that's the most important thing to me.
I love that. Imagine if the world would take on that, all the world would take on that philosophy, how different things would be.
Exactly. And it was funny. There's some other coaches. Of course, I've done a bunch of classes, and I know a lot of local coaches. And this one woman said, she goes, so what is your mission? What is it about? And what are you doing for these people? I said, well, I'm giving them a life that they have designed, a life that they will love. They will have better relationships. They will have better relationships with their children and with their husbands, with their community, with their friends. And she goes, go further. And I said, in the world, they'll be happy. So the happier we have as far as people in this world, the better place we will have as a world. So I think it will go further, and it makes everything better. And yes, if your life is good, you're going to come at things so much differently. I mean, how many times do we drive down the road and we're aggravated, and then somebody gets in front of us and we're like, And if you were not aggravated, how different would it be?
Yeah, just that simple example. It's like, and you even physically did it. This versus, oh,
Yeah,
whatever.
totally. One time I went to work, I was, I'd already made my decision to quit, and I was on my way to being a coach, and I was doing a commercial. I was freelancing, so I didn't work all the time. And I was on my way to work. I didn't even think about it. And I got to work, and one of my friends at work said, "You must be the happiest person I think I know." And I'm like, "Why do you say that?" He goes, "I saw you driving to work and you were smiling the whole time." I'm like, "Oh, that's so funny." Because I was probably listening to something or listening to music, and I was just enjoying the moment. I was enjoying the fact that I was going to work and enjoying the fact that I knew what I was doing next and I was heading that way. I mean, there were so many great things in my life that I couldn't be anything but happy.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. Let's just touch on that for just a moment before we wrap up. How you were smiling on your way to the job that you were about ready to leave for something different.
Well, the job wasn't horrible.
Okay.
There were things I really liked about it. And when I worked on commercials, there were a day or two, and it was fine a day or two. I could handle it for a day or two. The problem I had was that I was living in North Carolina, and I was in Asheville, and I was driving back and forth to Atlanta. So every time I would schedule something, I was always on the road. I was always away from the community in the place that I wanted to live.
Mhm.
So the job itself was fine. After a day or two, I was like, okay, I've talked to everybody. Now I don't want to work. Now I want to go home. So, and overall, I could manage my feelings and my thoughts in a short period, but it was when it was a longer format piece that it made it more difficult to me, because I just have to keep working, and that wasn't really where I wanted to be. So to manage it for a couple days, to enjoy the people that I was working with, which I did, it was just that I had no goal for the future, and I'm very goal oriented. And without a goal, it just made it sort of boring after a few days. So
Okay. So how do you handle when a client comes to you and says, "I have this job and I absolutely hate it, but I don't really know what I want to do." So there's obviously a period of time where you need to do some exploration and figure out what is it that you want to do. But all the meanwhile, I'm in this job that I can't stand going to.
well, that's where I work with them on their thoughts. It's like, all right, well,
Okay.
let's change your thought about the job. If you came at it from a different thought, what would that be? So yes, it's all about the thoughts.
Yeah.
And we work with those kind of things. And yeah, I mean, I have one client that went back to a job that she wanted to change, and she's still working on changing. But it was, it is about your thoughts. All right, well, you go back to that. Now, how are you going to feel when you go back to that? How do you think? What do you think about that? Because we all have to do things we don't like at times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just about managing your thoughts behind it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So for anyone who's listening who would like to reach out and connect with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
My website is Lesley King Empower. And I'm also on Facebook at Lesley King Empower. And my name is Lesley. You probably can find me the other way, spelling it incorrectly. But so yeah, those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Okay.
And Facebook is a great way.
Okay. So I'm going to offer, why don't you send your information to me, and we'll make sure when I post this that I'll post it somewhere with the video.
I will definitely do that. Do you want it? Do you want a card or something like that? Is that what you want? A logo, or do you want just the information?
Just the information's fine. I'll post it in with when I post it,
Okay.
the video, I'll just put like a description with
Okay,
your
great.
information in there in case anyone wants to reach out to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Well, thank you so much, Lesley. I appreciate you being here and sharing with us what you do, and you're very passionate about it. I love that.
Yes.
And I very much resonate with what you do, because I find a lot of the same things to be exciting. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mindy. This was a great interview. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Talk to you later.
Okay.